Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's program with the GLBT Historical Society. My name is Lee Pfeffer. I am the manager of museum experience here at the Society, and I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I'm really excited to be spending the evening with you. Before we get started, I just have a few things that I'm going to be starting off our conversation with. I would like to start, first of all, by acknowledging that the GLBT Historical Society is based on Ohlone tribal land, and I invite any Indigenous folks with us today to make themselves visible in the chat and be recognized as we honor the contemporary and ancestral lives of America's Indigenous peoples. This event tonight is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel and our website as usual. If you are watching along with us, we encourage you to participate in the chat, post comments, observations, and questions for our speaker, and I will be putting them up during our Q&A segment if you have any questions. Before I turn it over to our speaker, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Society and the work that we do, if you're not familiar with us already. We were founded in 1985, and the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, Transgender, or GLBT Historical Society is recognized internationally as a leader in LGBTQ public history. Our mission is to collect, preserve, exhibit, and make accessible to the public materials and knowledge to support and promote understanding of LGBTQ history, culture, and arts in all of their diversity. We have two centers of operation. We have the GLBT Historical Society Museum, which is in the heart of the Castro. It's in the middle of between Castro and Collingwood on 18th Street, and it is open and ready to welcome you to come and visit. We've been open there since 2011. And we also have the Dr. John P. DiCecco Archives and Research Center in the Mid-Market District downtown. I encourage you to please check out our growing array of exhibitions, events, and archival resources online at glbthistory.org. We also just posted a brand new primary source set that we're really proud of. Our archival team is working on putting together some really, really wonderful set of kind of themed primary sources on our website all the time, so please go check that out. And finally, I want to thank all of our members and donors that truly make our work possible. If you're not already a card-carrying member of the GLBT Historical Society, I invite you to consider joining today. Members get a whole bunch of really neat perks, including a 20% discount on really neat swag that we have in our physical store in the museum, as well as online. And you get access to special members-only events. You also get free admission for yourself and a guest in the museum. You can learn more about how to become a member and other ways that you can support the Society by visiting glbthistory.org/join-give. I also wanted to mention that last night we had our virtual gala, and we have a really, really wonderful silent auction that is still going on. You can put your bids in from now until Monday. I believe it closes Monday night, so you can still put bids in if you are interested in having your own pieces of LGBTQ history. There's also a bunch of really wonderful other packages and local gifts and really, really neat things. So without further ado, I wanted to give you all a little bit of information about tonight's speaker and program. I'm really excited to welcome her. We are talking to Chloe O. Davis, who is the author of this new wonderful book, The Queen's English, the LGBTQIA+ Dictionary of Lingo and Colloquial Phrases. Chloe is a proud Black bisexual woman and debut author who works in the entertainment industry in New York, and she's actually calling in tonight from tech for her newest project. She's a graduate of Hampton University and Temple University, and she's centered her creative platform on amplifying the narratives of Black culture and heightening the awareness of the LGBTQ community. Chloe Davis's work as a dancer, actor, and creative has allowed her to travel to all 50 states and internationally. In addition to performing at premier theaters across the country, such as New York City Center, the Apollo Theater, the Kennedy Center, the Muni, and Berkeley Repertory, she has also appeared on PBS's Great Performances with Porgy and Bess at the Metropolitan Opera, Jesus Christ Superstar Live in concert on NBC, and Southern Landscape performed by the Philadelphia Dance Company. In tandem with performing, Davis has spent 15 years researching, writing, and creating the Queen's English, and she believes this dictionary is a starting point for important conversations around inclusiveness, sexuality, gender expression, and identity. And we're going to start that conversation here tonight. So let me bring Chloe on. Hello.
Hi, Lee. Thank you so much for having me this evening, and thank you to the GLBT Historical Society. And of course, the museum. I can throw this out. I did some research at the museum for this book. So, my heart is so full that I'm able to connect with you tonight.
Well, thank you so much for being here, especially as you're in the middle of tech rehearsals. And I imagine that, life is pretty hectic and busy. I can't imagine being a dancer and working in theater and doing soon to be 8 days or 8 shows a week, and also doing book promotion. So you're a powerhouse. Without needing to be said. But yeah, as I understand it, you're going to talk a little bit about the book this evening, and then we're gonna open it up to everyone to ask questions. I might have some questions for you, just kind of spark some conversation, and really talk about why it's really important that we document and kind of track the language that we've used as a community through all the years that queerness has existed, which is
forever. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
I'm gonna pass it off to you and bring up some images, and you just tell me when you'd like me to move to the next one.
Wonderful. So again, I'm Chloe Davis, and this is the Queen's English, the LGBTQIA plus dictionary of lingo and colloquial phrases. I created this resource, honestly, to celebrate, affirm, and bring visibility to the spectrum of human identity, the intersectionality of who we are, and just to really celebrate just the vastness and the similarities and differences of what humanity looks like, and to truly celebrate who we are. It's not enough to just say, LGBTQIA plus or GLBT, right? It's about all those other layers of who we are, right? Part of me is saying that I'm this proud Black, bisexual, actually demisexual, biromantic woman is just like incredible, because all of these words affirm who I am, affirm my identity, helps me understand my journey with identity. And I think that's what this dictionary is, to just really celebrate, the vastness and beauty of identity. But I actually started creating this dictionary in 2006. So yes, that is over, a decade and a half ago. And it was because being an artist, it was because being a performer, dancer. The first dance company I was part of was called the Philadelphia Dance Company, also known as Philadanco. And I was in this company, and a lot of my friends in the company were part of the ballroom scene. So this is, of course, LGBTQ History Month. So let's dive into the ballroom scene and talk about the ballroom scene. But I'm going to kind of flip through so we can kind of do like a fun read along. But a little bit of history about the ballroom scene. It was created actually in the late 1960s, right? And it was created in New York City, particularly in Harlem. And it was created by majority Black, trans, queer, gay people, right? And also other people of color, particularly who are from Latin descent. But it was a place that was created to affirm the self-worth, right? Self-worth of being Black, the self-worth of being trans, the self-worth of being queer, gay, because we understand, just like now, of course, and even in 2021 going into 2022, we still experience racism, we still experience homophobia, we still experience transphobia, right? And having a safe space for us to stand firm in who we are. So the ballroom scene was created, particularly a little history. Crystal LaBeija, or Mother Crystal LaBeija, decided to, again, create this safe space where people of color who are also trans, gay, and queer had a place to feel affirmed and belong, and also to mentor young people, because as we know too, when you come out as, being queer, being gay, being trans, being bisexual, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes we do experience some type of resistance, right? And possibly that resistance can come from our biological families. And so what Mother Crystal LaBeija did, as well as some of her other friends and chosen family, decided to start a safe space for these young people to come in and be affirmed in their identity, whether it be their gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, and all of those things. So the ballroom scene was created. And I'm just going to read from the dictionary here. Ballroom scene, or ballroom culture. Noun, a distinct social community comprised mostly of Black and Latinx gay and transgender members who use ballroom competitions as a safe place to express their gender, sexuality, and artistic spirit. The phrase ball culture, gay balls, and drag balls can also be used. And we know a little bit about the ballroom scene now, especially if we've seen Pose, right, which was an absolutely wonderful landmark for inclusivity. If we've seen actually Paris is Burning, which was a documentary that dived into the ballroom scene in the 1980s, and also even the new HBO show Legendary. And of course, we can't forget RuPaul, because we hear the language of the ballroom scene. So when we hear words like beat and fierce and work and over, and come through and, slay, read, all of these words actually comes from the ballroom scene. So I'm going to read a part from the Did You Know? And it says, did you know the ballroom scene is centered around balls, competitions that champion self-expression. Competitors at a ball walk much like models on a runway for trophies and awards in themed categories. The best competitors are celebrated widely within the community's social house structure. And as I was saying, it's a house structure. It's chosen family, right? Social houses are typically made up of a house mother and or house father and their children, all whom take the last name of their chosen family. So in lieu of course, the celebration of, queer history, gay history, it is paramount that I dive into the brilliance of the ballroom scene, because now it has become mainstream because of those iconic figures like RuPaul. And also, even we talk about Naomi, who's very big on the social media platform. But the ballroom scene was created for a place of safety, a place of affirming and celebrating those who are people of color, those who are trans, those who are same gender loving, those who are gay, those who are bi, and those who are queer. So that's where the idea first came about, is because learning the vibrance of this language and just understanding that this is also my history, being a Black woman, being a bisexual woman, right? This was my history, and I just wanted to bring light to that history, right? And I think another reason of continuing was also what I said, standing firm in my identity. I didn't meet anyone who was openly bisexual until my early 20s. And I think that's problematic, right? It made me feel that my identity was not valid, was muted, right? And also a sense of erasure because of these binary ideas, right? That you have to be either gay or straight. And as we know, that is not true, right? It's not just even being bisexual, it's being pansexual, it's being asexual, right? It's being polysexual, it's being fluid, it's being flux. All of these identities are valid. And I realized that there weren't resources affirming identities, educating these identities, celebrating these identities. And I think that's where the work started to dive in. And also to understand that identities are so layered and beautifully complex. So it's not just our sexual anatomy, right? Being assigned female at birth, being assigned male at birth, or even being assigned intersex at birth. And I'm very proud that our society is pushing that more, to understand that this is an identity that should be valid, that is beautiful. And actually, in a little history, that in 2018, the state of Colorado was the first state to issue an interstate birth certificate. But it's not just about what the doctor assigned us at birth, you know? It's also about what lives up here. How do we identify? What is our gender identity? What makes us feel affirmed and whole and full, right? Is that being a demigirl? Is that being demigender? Is that being agender? Is that being null? Is that being neutros? Is that being non-binary, gender non-conforming? There's so many ways of how we realize who we are, cisgender, transgender, right? And it's also about what we're attracted to or what we're not attracted to, our attraction to others, right? Or less attraction to others, right? So it could be that someone's attraction is being heterosexual or homosexual. Someone's attraction could be bisexual, like myself, but also the attraction that is romantic, right? Are you homo-romantic? Are you pan-romantic? Those are also part of our identities that we want to uplift and bring validation to that. And then, of course, we have our relationship orientation. So is it monogamous? Is it polyamorous? Is it kink? Is it vanilla? Is it, fetishes? Is it, BDSM, right? Is it a celebration of all of those things? And I want to shout out the leather community, right? I actually learned so much about the leather community and from the GLBT Museum, honestly, and being connected with individuals, going into the history of the leather community, understanding the difference between role play and, and how we interact, whether it's dominant, whether it's submissive, whether we're negotiating, whether there are contracts. There's so much beauty when we come to that type of liberation, sexual liberation, and just liberation of identity. So, this dictionary is truly a celebration of identities of our diverse communities, whether it be the ballroom scene or the leather community or the lesbian community or, our young non-binary community or our trailblazers that are HIV and AIDS activists during the 1980s. That this is a celebration of that history and of those identities. And even when they weren't affirmed, I wanted to make sure that it's affirmed in this dictionary. So that's a little bit about the overarching idea of the Queen's English, and I would love to kind of get into some slides to show you the beautiful design and makeup. So this first slide I wanted to show, so the Queen's English, I wanted it to be a beautiful book. I wanted it to not only affirm and celebrate, but I wanted it to engage. So some of the things you see here are illustrations. It's colorful. And this first illustration you see, it's a list of different identities, right? Whether it be agender, all gender, androgynous, bigender, butch, these are different identities. And again, it's ways to celebrate that they exist, whether we are open and forthright about it, whether it's printed in books or not, it still exists. And I wanted to make sure I use this platform as the Queen's English to continue to affirm all identities. And then when you see the list of, the diversity in language, we have AAPI, we have Abigail, we have ableism. So the list of language that's in here is inclusive, it's diverse, it dives into the many stories and people that make up our gay and queer community. And if you also look, you see that you have these other elements, right? Not only do you see the term, but of course you see the part of speech. You also see definitions, plural, because I like to say there's always one way to define something. And writing this dictionary, again, inclusivity. How many ways or how many different ways can we use a word? And I just wanted to make sure that they were all valid. And then you also will have a usage example to show the nuance of how a word or phrase is used. And if you see those little emojis like, it was just a fun way to show synonyms, right? So maybe the synonym is in a phrase to give you a quick reference to say, this synonym belongs, is a quick reference to this term or phrase. And these are some new parts that I really like. It's called a Did You Know? It dives deeper into the essence of the community, the essence of the word or phrase, because, sometimes with the dictionary, just having the definition, even a synonym, even a usage example isn't enough, you know? I wanted to dive deeper into the etymology of the word, or I wanted to dive deeper into the history of the word, or the history of where it comes from, or what is presently happening now. And then you see kind of like this red, like alert, alert, that's the usage note. And a lot of times I've used with this usage note, I say where the actual term comes from, right? So to say that possibly this term originated, like we spoke about the ballroom scene, it originated in the ballroom scene, or this term originated or is commonly used in the leather kink BDSM communities, right? Or this term is commonly used within the gender nonconforming, transgender, non-binary communities, or to even say that this term may be considered derogatory or stereotype, or to say this term may be considered pejorative, because I also wanted to understand that it's not, again, it's not enough to just list words, but we have to understand the context of words, because words really empower, but words can also hurt, so that we have a guide to say, hey, some members of the community feel like this word is very hurtful. So alert, alert, you know, and there may be some members of the community that may not feel that way, but either or, we want to make sure that both narratives or all narratives are considered. Again, inclusivity. So if we can go to the next slide. So if you look, I like to have these interstitial spreads in the book, right? And so it's just a breakup with not just having the terms, but also the who, what, where, when, how, and what the community is about. And of course, pronouns are very, very important. Pronouns are a way to really affirm someone's identity. And, you know, we also understand that pronouns are not just binary, he or she, right? And pronouns are not just he, she, they, but there's a plethora of other pronouns that could be used to identify someone. And this was a beautiful opportunity for us, for it to be a learning experience, and to also share, again, the journeys of individual experiences. And then if you see too, the line, the red. So throughout the dictionary, I use the color block to represent particularly using the Philadelphia pride flag, which is inclusivity of the black and the brown stripes. So I go throughout the dictionary using black and brown and going through the Roy G. Biv. So that's how I wanted to kind of lay out the dictionary to also include that inclusivity. And if we go to the next slide, I can go further into showing pride flags. Pride flags, there's a multitude of pride flags. You know, just showing here the pride flag for gender fluid, pride flag for gender flux. There's so many different pride flags. It's not, you know, just the Roy G. Biv that is the international one, right? And I love that we are even engaging more in the progress pride flag that is inclusive to not just the black and brown stripes, but also inclusive to trans identity, gender nonconforming identities, right? And then also we see that we even have the intersex pride flag that is starting to make its way in. But I just wanted to acknowledge the many communities that also have pride flags. And so you will also see those throughout when possible, based on, you know, the identity. If there was a pride flag, then I wanted to make sure that it was included. And if you see too, now you see the color pattern here is blue, and you still see those usage notes. And then you also see a part that says see also. That see also could be a word that also references, could help us understand the connectivity between, you know, the highlighted term or phrase, but also the see also can take you to the interstitial spreads I talked about. And if you see here, the genderbread person, that's a beautiful spread that I love, because it really navigates and brings the understanding of identity that, you know, it is our, you know, yes, it could be our sexual anatomy. Yes, it could be our gender identity. Yes, it could be our gender expression that lives out here. Yes, it could be our, you know, sexual orientation, but it's all of those things. You know, it's not just one, and then we can fluctuate beyond. Again, it's not about binary, it's about spectrum. And if we can go to the next slide. So I love to have a little fun, and I love this particular illustration for Kingster. But illustrations were really important to me. I actually worked with Troy Lambert. He was my main illustrator, and we really went fine-tooth comb through this dictionary and wanted to bring illustrations that really brought out the who, what, where, when, and why of gay and queer culture. And I love this particular illustration for Kingster. It just shows, again, sexual liberation. Liberation is liberation, whether that be our identity with our gender, whether it be our identity with our expression, whether it be our identity with our sexual expression. But that's liberation, and I wanted, again, to honor that. So you see kink, you see kinkster, but then you also see the other diverse terms. You see kiki scene, which is part of the ballroom scene. You see kiki, which also has different definitions. You can have to kiki, to laugh, and or to enjoy like a social setting coming from the ballroom scene. Also, you had the kiki, a kiki girl, right? Which in the lesbian community, which was basically, so we understand that a little history again, the butch binary, the butch femme binary developed in the lesbian scene in the 1940s. And the kiki girl actually was the individual that did not fit, when we talk about these binaries, didn't fit the binary. Either didn't fit the binary in the expression, not wanting to express strictly femme or strictly butch, but also in the attraction, not wanting to strictly say, hey, as a more femme identifying person, that I have to be attracted to someone who's butch, or vice versa, right? So the kiki, the kiki girl was in between, and was open to just the beauty of a person and didn't have to fit the binary. But it's interesting because during the 1940s, actually, the kiki girl was kind of the outsider, right? Because she didn't fit into these binaries. So it's interesting that regardless if we, are gay, are queer, are same gender loving, that for some reason this heteronormative idea of society infiltrates into the way we are, which kind of hinders the beauty of, again, who we are in our identity and our spectrum of identity. And if we can go to the next slide. So here again, we have illustrations. And I want to also mention the other illustrators. I had Cassandra Fontaine, I had Shanae Benjamin, and also Mark Urey, who also brought their beauty and their creative artistic expression in making sure we had illustrations that represented the beautiful intersectionality of our community. And I love this one because we have Leather Daddy that's highlighted. And again, I just am always so honored to know that I'm, in the graces of the GLBT Historical Society Museum, because I just remember, years ago coming to the museum for the first time and diving into those archives and just learning more about the scene, and just feeling so liberated to know that, this story, this history is here, and I can just also be an asset of documenting that, so the visibility is given. And then we have another pride flag, right? The lesbian pride flag. So that's the nuance of the dictionary, that it's like, wow, it's a dictionary, but a lot of people say it's so much more. And sure, it can be, but it's really what it is. I feel like it was my love letter to myself, right? To help affirm who I am, to give me the tools and confidence I needed to say, without a shadow of a doubt, this is who I am, and I'll stand firm in that, and I have a community that supports me. But for everyone to have that same type of visibility and celebration in our beautiful identities. And if we can go to the next one. So again, in lieu of our LGBTQ History Month, one of the moments that really struck me was learning more about the Harlem Renaissance. Being a Black bisexual woman, it was so affirming to know that I stand on the shoulders of Josephine Baker, not just as, an artist, but also, during that time. And so I just was so excited to know more about the Harlem Renaissance. And there's this amazing quote that said, the Harlem Renaissance was just as gay as it was Black. And if you see the people here, you see Ma Rainey, you see Josephine Baker, you see Zona Hurston, you see Langston Hughes, you see Alan Locke. And these, not only were they prolific writers and amazing entertainers, but they were also part of our community. And we don't celebrate that enough. For me to just learn about these figures, I just wanted to make sure that the world knew that, not only were they just amazing performers and artists and writers, but they were just amazing in who they were for just being Black, and amazing who they were for being queer. And I just wanted to just celebrate them, even though that maybe if they weren't celebrated then, I wanted to celebrate them now. And actually, if you see at the bottom, this was a song Ma Rainey wrote. I went out last night with a crowd of my friends. It must have been women, because I don't like no men. Wear my clothes just like a fan. Talk to the girls just like any old man. So this is Ma Rainey putting it out there that she was a proud bull dagger. And it's interesting because the word dyke comes from bull dyke, bull dagger. And it's interesting because we are celebrating over a century long of using this word dyke, bull dagger. And before, bull dyke, bull dagger represented either that a woman was attracted to another woman, or we talk about sexual orientation, or we talk about gender expression, that a woman had a more masculine flair, right? And both Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, right, these legendary blues singers, they were proud bull dykes and bull daggers. They said it with such pride. And it's interesting how over time things shift, right? Because then dyke was taken, shortened, and given this derogatory term, right? And it shifted the views, right? Instead of it being affirming, it started to be derogatory. And so the community again reappropriated and said, no, this is ours. And I love to celebrate Dykes on Bikes because, that is a powerful group of women, and they are proud to be dykes and giving that type of power again to the word dyke that was created all the way back in the 1920s. So we'll just go to the last slide, or the next slide. So I love this image. It's quite beautiful, but this is an illustration by Cassandra Fontaine. And this is an illustration I think is so beautiful. It's under the word queer. And just, again, I like to talk about the spectrum of identity. And we see it here, right? We see different people, different skin tones, different gender expressions, different gender identities, different abilities, and I think that that's what's so beautiful about our world and our society, is that we're so different. And if we can just learn how to celebrate those differences, be compassionate to those differences, respect those differences, I think we can get to such a beautiful place. And with the Queen's English, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to celebrate, empower, bring visibility to the differences, to the differences. And that's what makes us such a beautiful community. So thank you, Lee. I would love to just pick your brain and get into some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we got to kind of show folks a little bit of the book, and I mean, there's so much more in here. I picked it up, and like the first thing that I told Chloe was, I was just like, it's so colorful and it's so beautifully designed, and I love to hold the book and move through it, because it's such a bright and it's just such a bright and empowering design, as well as you're like diving into this history. It's as colorful as I feel like the entire queer community is, which is really neat. So kudos to your design team, and kudos to you. I put the opportunity for folks, please put questions for Chloe if you have in the comments. I've got a couple of things that I would love to ask you. I'm sure that you've answered this in plenty of interviews, but I just kind of wanted to get at the root of like, what specifically inspired you to create the book, and what led you to saying this needs to be in this format as a dictionary, as opposed to like, here's a book on queer language, here's an academic book on queer language.
Just referencing again just my friends in the ballroom scene, being Black gay men, hearing the vibrance of the language, and also knowing the appropriation of the language. That was the first, that was honestly the first initial thing. I was like, this language is being used, first of all, in the wrong way. And then people who have created the language aren't getting the credit. And I find that not just with, language from the ballroom scene or from the Black gay and queer community, but just from the LGBTQI plus community, period, right? That was what I felt was problematic, is that the language was being taken, whether it be through pop culture, whether it be through celebrities, bringing into pop culture, which then goes into mainstream, but people not getting credit for the language contributions. So that was one aspect. The other aspect was, like I said before, having a resource that helped affirm who I am, right? Giving me the tools to say, yes, you are bisexual, and yes, that's okay, and yes, you're not the only, and no, you don't have to choose a side, right? To have language to say, okay, I remember when I was bi-curious, or I remember when, just, or I am a demisexual, that feels right to me. That there's nothing wrong with that. It's having language to just say, oh, you're affirmed, was another thing. And it started with me. And what I realized is that, and the research and conversations with other people, more people needed the same type of resource. And I feel like that was the beauty of the support that I was getting, because friends that I would interview would introduce me to their friends, or family members then would introduce me to their friends and family members and coworkers, and, going into different LGBT centers all over the country, neighborhoods, bars, and literally just saying, hey, I'm writing a dictionary. It always was so affirming and supportive. And truthfully, I want to say maybe the first 5 years, even when I was writing, documenting, collecting words, I didn't know that that's what, I didn't know it would be this. I didn't know that, I just knew that I loved connecting with people. I loved hearing people's stories. And there was a sense of trust and transparency in our conversations and vulnerability that I said, wow, this just, it's needed, it's needed. And, as the years went on, and I kept looking to see that there was just not a dictionary. I mean, there are several glossaries, right? And there's several like reference glossaries. But what I found is that they were one dimensional, right? Either they would just represent the gay community, right? Or it would just represent the white gay community, or it would just represent the lesbian community, or just the white lesbian community. I just didn't see, again, that diversity in language and history, we know about, of course, we know about Stonewall. Well, most of us, right? We still have our young people learning, but we learn about Stonewall. We're just learning more that, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, we're just learning about that, right? But that wasn't the initial narrative. The narrative excluded a lot of people of color. And that's problematic, because that's the sense of erasure, right? We are erasing true history and recreating a history that is not fair for many people, for minority people, whether that be minority when it comes to, race or ethnicity, or whether that be minority when we talk about gender identities and expressions, right? Like, where are the resources about understanding, the identity of being aromantic? Where are the resources about understanding the identity of being a gender boy, gender girl? I mean, demi boy, demi girl. Where are the resources to understand agender?
Right.
Where are those resources, right? And so I don't know. I think it's one of those things where maybe, how something chooses you, even though you think you chose it. I think this just chose me.
It's just meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, you started this in 2006, you said, right? That is, I cannot imagine. It's such a tumultuous change between 2006 and 2021 in so much of culture, but specifically also just, I mean, even just in the last 5 years of the way that queerness
Mhm.
is interacting with the
Mhm.
world and in, representation
Mhm.
in media. Kind of what was it like for you essentially documenting that change
Yeah.
through the language?
Yeah.
How did you kind of
Well, you know what?
navigate that
It was
shift?
beautiful. It was beautiful because it's not that I had to take away anything. I just continued to
You just
enhance
kept
and
adding.
add. Yeah. Because that's the thing. I wanted to document all the language, or as much as I personally could find. So it wasn't about just because things are changing, we just erase the past. That's problematic. We don't want to do that. We want to tell the truths, the historical truths, and language helps us understand the historical truths. Even when we talk about the word queer, right? So queer, of course, is starting to be like odd or, different, peculiar, but queer being used eventually in a way that was derogatory to identify those who were gay or homosexual, right? Same gender loving. But over time, actually through the HIV and AIDS activism in the 1980s, it was reappropriated, just like that.
Mhm.
I was talking about Dyke. It was reappropriated to say, oh, you want to call me queer? Well, guess what? Yes, I am. And I'm proud of it. I am proud of this. And it's interesting because that's why now in 2021, going into 2022, queer is now this, it used to be gay. Now it's queer is this all catchphrase of someone who's just not heterosexual or someone who's not just, cisgender. But it's the activism of people reclaiming this word so that way we can use it now and it be so self-righteous and just feeling good about that, using this word for our identity, right? But we
Right.
have to talk about that history and that lineage and that activism that got us to this point. And that's what I don't want to leave out, and it's the same thing with documenting language. Language grows. At first, language, and it still is, language, especially in our community, language is used to help with safety, it's coded, right, for our protection, because we still have to understand that as we're still fighting, for rights. But, it was illegal, to be out and open with however you identify. It was illegal for a very, very long time. And we are still fighting for rights, right? For us to stand firm with who we are. So I love it because over this time, it was basically documenting history again, just through language. And so it was just really beautiful. I mean, to understand, I think I've always had LGBTQ, but just even to say, oh, well, but in 2016, GLAD said, hey, yes, LGBTQ is the way to go.
Hmm.
And I remember even like maybe even 2017, when I was still working on this dictionary, I wanted to put LGBTQIA plus, and it was really important. And I just remember people kind of challenging me. It's like, oh, it's a little long. I'm like, why? Never long, you know what I
Right.
mean? And I remember someone even asking me, why can't we just, not what we, but someone who is not part of the gay or queer community asking, why can't it just be shorter? The letters be shorter. I was like, well, who is that serving? That's serving
Right.
you. That's not serving us, because that means someone's getting left out. I don't want people left out. Sometimes when we umbrella terms, someone gets left out. And I wasn't with this dictionary. It's not about umbrellaing things or making things fit in a box. It was showing the vastness and the beauty and the color and the nuance of humanity. That was the goal.
Right. Well, and I think it's so, as you were saying, it's so important to dive into the history of these terms. You can't divorce these this language and these terms from where we came before. I think there's a lot of conversation with a lot of conversation nowadays with like what is the correct term, what
Mm-hmm.
is the right language. And I think we have to really kind of think about it as um, here's language that is currently being used and is currently best practices. but that doesn't mean that the language that other people are using to describe themselves that might have been, kind of in use and at the height of, kind of in vogue, 10 years ago is not valid.
Right.
And I think that especially with younger generations right now that are kind of coming into, a world that has never been as out and queer as it is right now. I
It's
think
very new. It's very new.
it's very new. I think we have time for one more question, and then I know you've got to go back into into working. So Kyle has a question for you. What terms were you most surprised to learn, and which were you most surprised to learn the origin of? I'm sure
Man.
there's a lot that you
So
came against.
there are some few terms that I absolutely love. I love zucchini, and that's definitely part of. Well, actually, let's read it because why not? Let's read from the dictionary. But zucchini makes me smile. Okay, zucchini, noun, a partner in a queer platonic relationship. The term queer platonic partner or can also be used. And this term originated in the asexual and the aromantic communities. So I really love that. And I'm going to actually go back to a queer platonic relationship to identify that, because that's another one that I was like, yes, I've been there.
I mean, it's funny because I'm in the ace and aro community, and zucchini is new to me too. So it's so valuable.
So that's I love that you say that, because we're not monolithic, and everyone in the community doesn't use the same language or even know the same language, right? But it's just beautiful to say, oh wow, like that's special. And then also to know, if you are non-binary, to know what the lesbian community is talking about, or what the gay community is talking about, or what again, the aromantic community or the asexual community. It's nice to also be allies to each other, and I think that's important. So queer platonic partner, I love this one. But again, a partner in a queer platonic relationship. And I'm going to read this usage example. It says, Victoria and I work together, cry together, braid each other's hair, communicate intimately, and support and love each other as queer platonic partners. And then it says this term originated in the asexual and aromantic community, and it has been appropriated by the larger LGBTQIA plus community. So that's what I was meaning about, how we also have taken each other's language, which is fine, but let's also just give credit where credit is due, right? And when I was saying the synonym, it says, want more info, think a loving, non-romantic, non-sexual bestie and partner.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, thank you,
wonderful.
Lee.
Thank you so much. I want to encourage everybody to check out the book. You can go to the website for the book at thequeensenglishus.com. You can also follow the Instagram, the Queen's English US, and anyone who would like to purchase the book and kick a few bucks the way of the GLBT Historical Society, you can get the book on our bookshop.org page. You can just go to bookshop.org/shop/GLBT history. And if you send an email to me and let me know that you purchased a book through our website and came tonight, this is my my email. We might be able to maybe see about getting you a signed book plate from Chloe. So please feel free to email me, and I hope everyone has a really lovely evening. We're gonna let Chloe get back to doing tech. I hope that you get to sleep at some time soon, because you're in Chicago right now, right?
Yeah, we're not done till midnight. So,
oof. All right. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. We're so happy to have you, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye.